Hello and welcome to our exam speaking skills video. In the video, we will touch upon the following points. What exam speaking skills are and their difference from general speaking skills, the exam criteria for different exams, different speaking tasks one can get at an exam, lastly, the learner's problems and tips and activities that can help them perform better at exams. Let's get started then. What do you think exam speaking skills are? They are the combination of having good speaking skills, being aware of what to expect at an exam, the ability to think on your feet, but, more importantly, being prepared for the exam. To understand what is expected of your learners, it is important to have a look at different exam criteria that different exams have. So, to begin, let's look at 3 different exams. Ielts has 4 criteria: fluency and coherence, grammatical range and accuracy, lexical resource, and pronunciation. Cambridge exams, like B2 First, C1 Advanced, or C2 Proficiency, assess the learner on the following criteria: grammatical resource, lexical resource, discourse management, pronunciation, interactive communication. This one appears because the interviews are held for pairs of candidates. APTIS assesses the test takers on 3 basic parameters: informational functions, interactional functions, and managing interaction. These include skills like agreeing and disagreeing, explaining opinions, preferences, elaborating, modifying or commenting, justifying, asking for opinions, comparing, conversational repair, negotiation of meaning, summarizing, and others. So, on average, as opposed to writing, task response isn't one of the assessment criteria, which is fair because when we speak, we usually don't have time to plan what we're going to say. This doesn't mean that students can come up with memorized responses that have nothing to do with the original question, but rather that if one aspect of the question isn't covered, it won't mean getting a lower score. Let's talk about the Ielts criteria in more detail, as in my opinion, they can help describe what is generally considered good speaking best. First of all, fluency and coherence. The idea that the test taker can speak at length about unfamiliar topics and make sense at the same time. There can be hesitations and self-corrections, but they have to be natural, meaning not impeding communication. What the test taker is saying has to be more or less logical. Grammatical range and accuracy. Not only does the test taker have to produce a lot of error-free sentences, as it is explained in the speaking descriptors for Ielts, but the grammatical range has to be pretty wide. The good news is these structures don't necessarily have to be used correctly to count. Of course, it's better to both show a wide range and be accurate, but if there is a nice structure they want to use but aren't sure about the accuracy, they should go for it. The next one is lexical resource, or more commonly, the test taker's vocabulary. The key here is, once again, to show range and appropriacy of use. However, using a low-frequency word can once again overshadow using it appropriately. In other words, if there is a nice juicy word your learners know and want to use, but are not sure if they are going to use it appropriately, they should do it, as this will show their range. And finally, pronunciation. It has to do with individual sounds, word stress, sentence stress, and intonation. A lot of teachers neglect pronunciation or some aspects of it, but as you remember from our previous video, it means much more than just sounding good. A fix as little as making sure your intonation is rising and falling, not flat, can improve the score. It is also important to explain to your students that sounding like a native speaker is not essential for a high score. Any accent is fine as long as the speech is intelligible and all the pronunciation features are there. Now, let's move on to talking about the different types of tasks you might get in different exams. They range from describing or comparing pictures to answering complicated questions without any thinking time whatsoever. Here is a short list: describing an experience, describing a photo and answering questions about it, answering general questions about yourself, talking about a material, a leaflet, a poster, and evaluating certain aspects of it, discussing a spider web with some ideas with a partner. Without a doubt, you should prepare your learners for specific tasks when you're doing exam preparation, and this counts for any skill. So, take your time, introduce them to a certain task type, and, more importantly, give them enough practice. They are learning English to be able to communicate, after all, so you can't go wrong here. Alright, so what are the most common issues learners might have here, and how can we deal with those? Number 1, flat intonation. A lot of Ukrainian and Russian-speaking people tend to have a somewhat flatter intonation than English speakers. However, having a natural rising and falling intonation can work wonders, not only for the learner's score, but also for their intelligibility. A natural intonation will ensure they sound more interesting and, conversely, a flat one makes them sound dull and harder to follow. The examiner's job is, of course, to listen carefully to what the candidate is saying and to find something good about it, but any exam is ultimately preparation for real life. And the score can show how ready they are to function in an English-speaking society. For example, if their intonation is flat and the sentence stresses are off, they will not be understood. A good activity to draw the learner's attention to intonation and to help them work on their own is cinemaoki. The idea is to watch any film or TV series in English and to pause after a complete sentence or phrase and try to copy it exactly the way it was said. If it is difficult for them to tell, they can record themselves, listen, and compare. Repeat until they get it right. Number 2, no ideas or freezing if an unfamiliar topic comes up. This is very common with teenagers. A good solution could be teaching them to go with their first idea, as the examiner doesn't really care about what they say, just about how they say it. One trick that can help them is the fields trick. The idea is to take the question and to examine it from the point of view of different fields. For example, the question, what would happen if the retirement age were extended, can be answered using the following structure. Well, economically speaking, if we take the sociological aspect into consideration, ethically speaking, this will not only give them more to say, but will automatically make their speech more coherent. Number 3, short responses that should be extended. Test takers sometimes treat the speaking part of the exam as an interrogation. The examiner is the investigator whose job is to get that information at any price, no matter how little they want to share it. Of course, that is not how it should go. It is the test taker's job to present their speaking in the best light possible. And that can't happen without, well, speaking. So, besides reminding them to extend their answers, you could teach them the Tensest Trick. This one lets them answer a simple question as if they have a lot to say. For example, the question, do you like reading? Instead of just giving a short yes or no answer, the learners should look at it in terms of the past, present, and future. Let me think. When I was little, I really enjoyed reading. I used to read a lot of fairy tales and adventure books. These days, I'm afraid I don't have as much time as I would have liked, but I'm hoping that it will change in the future. Not only do they have more to say, but they get to show off their fantastic grammatical range. So, to sum up, there are certain tricks that can help your learners cut a few corners here and there, but there is no substitute for practice. This brings us to the end of the speaking module. You can look for one more useful tip below the video, and see you in the next one!